Now, you have found such amazing nuggets in the only book, hear me, the only Bible the first church had was what we call the Old Testament. And from that Bible, they were functioning really, really well. But you were talking about the blood moons, and this gives us an insight into the timing of what's happening on planet Earth.
Well, several years ago, in fact, it was in the 1990s, I began to study a verse that's very complicated in the sense of how do you interpret it. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord.
Right.
In the 1960s, when they had the moon landing, a woman from my dad's church says that's the prophecy fulfillment. The Russians are going to go to the moon. The Americans are going to go to the moon. They're going to kill each other. It's going to be, I don't know if you ever heard that theory.
No.
And I thought, I mean, how are they going to kill each other? When you swing a sword, you have to swing it so slow, the guy can dodge it, or if you shoot a, I mean, I was just saying to myself, this doesn't make sense. What I did, I studied it from a rabbinical perspective. Now, in the rabbinical perspective, lunar eclipses and solar eclipses. A solar eclipse is when the moon looks orange or looks blood. Those are signs. For example, lunar eclipses. Now, here's the thing you got to understand. We're not just making this up. Rabbis have actually traced this down for hundreds of years, and they've noticed that during certain solar eclipses, things follow in the world. For example, earthquakes often follow, famines often follow, or global wars often follow. With Jews, they discovered that when the moon turns to blood, if it happens on a major feast day, here's the key. It's not just what we call the moon turning into blood or a lunar eclipse. It's when it happens on feast days through history, something significant happens somewhere within 12 months to 48 months to the Jewish people. You've had a series of lunar eclipses that have happened in the spring feast and the fall feast on specific feast days about 7 times throughout history. And every time it relates either to the city of Jerusalem, it relates to the time Columbus discovered America, it relates to a time, a prophetic time.
Really significant.
Very significant. And I wanted to write this down to get them exact for those of you that are watching. The next ones that are coming up that are on feast days will be the first day of Passover, April 15th, 2014. The first day of Tabernacles, April 8th, 2014. And this is a full lunar eclipse. Then the first day of Passover, April 4th, 2015. The first day of Tabernacles, September 28th, 2015. Now, from, again, a rabbinical perspective, and a lot of the Jewish people watching us have rabbis that can verify this, the blood moons are a bad sign for Israel. They're considered an omen of trouble for Israel. Now, you cannot look at these and say what's going to happen because none of us know. I can't do that. But we do know that on feast days, it doesn't matter if it happens, in January or February, but when it falls specifically on a feast day, something significant happens either with the Jewish people or with Israel. And the sad thing is, it's not always good. So that is when the book of Joel and the book of Acts, Joel 2 and Acts 2 says, the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. Most scholars interpret the great and terrible day of the Lord as being the days of tribulation. So these are blood moons to happen before the tribulation period. And of course, we're not in the tribulation period yet, of course, according to what I can see, because, prophetically.